The city of Phoenix is the Valley's home for the homeless. And in the midst of a huge spike in people who have nowhere to go, the city council voted last week to double the number of beds at the downtown Human Services campus. It's good news, but there's a lot more to the story, and it affects all of us here in the Valley. The Arizona Republic's Jessica Boehm joins us. Her full-time beat is housing insecurity. There is no one who knows this issue better. Jessica, welcome back to Square Off.
Thanks, Graham.
Now, this expansion has been in the works for 2 years. Here's the big picture. Phoenix is home to 8 out of 10 shelter beds in Maricopa County. The downtown expansion will bring the number of beds to about 1,800 countywide, but an estimated 7,500 people are experiencing homelessness. That year-old number is likely larger right now. So, Jessica, advocates for the homeless had a mixed reaction after the council vote. What did they gain in this vote?
So this vote really had multiple components, but the biggest thing that people who want to shelter more people were able to achieve is they were able to get 275 new permanent beds year-round that can be used to shelter people. But they also got another 200 what they call weather relief beds. So during our extreme weather, mostly in the summer, but also in this winter, they'll be able to bring 200 additional people inside. So 275 permanent beds, 200 for weather relief.
And that might get some of those folks in the tents we've been seeing on video just now. At the same time, they saw a big missed opportunity. What was that?
So in addition to the beds that I just discussed, they were also asking for a new low barrier shelter near the campus, just across the street. And low barrier has a lot of different definitions depending on who you ask, but the main point is that you figure out why someone doesn't want to go into a shelter, why they don't feel comfortable at CAS. For a lot of people, that's because you have to sign in at a certain time, you have a curfew. There's people who have mental health and drug addiction issues who don't feel comfortable in the setting. And you try to figure out why they're not going into a shelter, and you reduce those barriers. Once they're inside, they still have to follow rules and comply with, you're not allowed to use drugs, things like that. But there was this hope that they could turn an existing building that the Andre House already owns and was offering to renovate for $1 million into a low barrier shelter. And ultimately, the city council tried to strike a compromise, and they said, we'll give you more beds at the existing one, no more beds at this new shelter you want to build.
And they ran into concerns from the neighbors, from businesses in the area about that low barrier shelter. What's interesting is these are folks who people are really concerned that they're out on the street, people with substance abuse issues, and yet they wouldn't create a home for them. What were the neighbors' issues, the businesses' issues?
Well, originally the neighbors didn't want any new beds, period, at either shelter. And they really felt like they compromised by allowing some at the existing shelter where they already kind of understood how that worked. A low barrier shelter is kind of a new thing in Metro Phoenix. And there was a lot of concerns about the type of people it would bring to the area and, whether it would be, something good for that neighborhood. What I think is important to note is the city of Phoenix last year unanimously passed a homelessness plan in which they said they wanted to lower barriers. They wanted to create these types of shelters because we know that the best way to get someone back into housing is to start with shelter. And so by kind of passing up this opportunity, it now puts the onus on the city of Phoenix to find somewhere else and someone else willing to spend that kind of money to build a low barrier shelter.
Now, Mayor Kate Gallego told me on this show a year ago she supported a big plan to add more beds, and I believe that larger plan. Where did she fall on the final vote here?
So, she did, prior to the vote that was ultimately passed that didn't include a low barrier shelter, she did go along with a minority of the council to include a low barrier shelter. By the time she cast her vote, it was clear that it was going to fail. But she did make that vote, I guess, to make it known to all of us that she supports a low barrier shelter. But she ultimately went along with the rest of the council, with the majority of the council, to support no low barrier shelter, but the 475 beds at Cass.
Now, you've made the point in your coverage that Phoenix, unlike other cities, has some time to deal with this, the homelessness crisis. Does this vote give us more time?
You know, this vote is a drop in the bucket. You read those numbers earlier. We have, at least 7,500 people in Maricopa County experiencing homelessness, and we only have about 17 to 1,800 permanent beds. So while this is an important step, it is a baby step, and it's going to take the state, the county, the city of Phoenix, and all of our surrounding cities to really step up, because at this point, we're not LA, we're not San Francisco. We have a problem that we can put our arms around. It's a solvable problem. But in 5 years, at the rate of growth we're experiencing in this population, it won't be anymore.
Jessica Boehm, thanks so much for joining us. Great insight.